Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, I know this is a lot about pandemic pets and so some of the things I've been seeing are some of the things that we've experienced ourselves, but it's affected our dogs as well. The socialization issue, we shut down, we shut in, our dog's socialization stopped. And so I'm seeing a lot of a large increase in what I call stranger danger issues. All of a sudden, people are scary and they may not have been scary before, or other dogs are cause for reactivity. So we are seeing some big socialization problems with our dogs. And we kind of, those of us in the circle of training and behavior, kind of expected to see that, even if the dogs were not problematic before. We're also seeing separation anxiety issues as well, because again, we shut down and shut in, and now we can we are going back to normal. We know what that means, but unfortunately, our pups don't. So those are some of the basics I've been seeing, and I know a lot of you have other questions, so I would love to be able to answer those for you and help you as best as I can in this format.
Actually, what you just mentioned plays right into a question that Sarah has already typed into the chat.
Okay.
So Sarah types, I'm ready to have company over and entertain, but my healer puppy, who's a 15-month-old, is not excited about intruders. We've tried meeting company outside with the pup and have her meet and greet in a neutral space. We've also used peanut butter smeared on new fingers, but she is so reactive to new people. And that's a problem that I relate to. I had a reactive dog who didn't like people or dogs or bicycles or motorcycles or anything like that. So that's a really challenging issue. So is anything off the top of your head spring to
Yes.
mind for advice for Sarah?
A lot of things off the top of my head. I work with a lot of these dogs, stranger danger, 15 months old. If you think about if you've had this dog since it was a pup, it's gone through several developmental periods in those 15 months. First fear period ends at about 9 to 12 weeks. And then we have the second fear period, which happens anywhere from 6 to 14 months of age. And when we shut down during those crucial socialization periods, we lose a little bit. We lose that opportunity to socialize. And we have, I mean, it's to no fault of anyone. First thing, when we've got a dog with stranger danger issues, trying to be the dog's friend puts a lot of pressure on the dog. So, for example, I like to equate these kinds of things with spiders because most of us humans don't care for them. So, if you think of a giant horror movie sized spider in the middle of the room and trying to be your friend, how would you react to it? Most of us would be overwhelmed by the giant horror movie sized spider. And what happens is we try to coax the pup to it. It's okay. They like you. They're friendly. And the dog, it gets even a little bit more reactive or even a little bit more fearful or even show a little bit of aggressive behavior because now we're putting all this pressure on the dog to like us. So my first tactic is always what I call born ignore. There's no dog here. I can sit in your house and have a conversation with you without acknowledging your dog whatsoever. And the reason I do that, and if you think about the way people greet one another, we walk right up to each other, we give eye contact, we reach out, shake hands, or bump, or whatever we do now. Everything happens all at once, right? And for our dogs that need a little bit more time, that is just way too much, and it's a little bit creepy. It's a little bit like a big spider trying to coax you in. So first step always, and I meet these dogs aren't darn near daily anymore. Born ignore, there's no dog here. And then instead of coaxing the dog to my hand for the promise of a treat, which could have shrunk down to the size of a peanut, um, I'm now going to drop a food treat on the ground if the dog is curious enough about me. If the dog sniffs me, great, he's curious. If the dog, but he's not inviting me. He's just investigating. Who are you? And in my case, I smell like dog 98% of the time. So I'm sure it's confusing, but they're going to sniff me. They're going to smell me to find out who I am. That's how dogs learn. But at that point, my food's going to fall on the floor, either near me or away from me. And both, actually, I do both. So now I want the dog's perception to be every time I look at this lady, food falls out of the sky, chicken from heaven. Yay, me. I get. So we start to slowly condition the dog to see that there's really not the threat the dog perceives it to be. And it's all about the dog's perception. To us, it doesn't make a lot of sense. I love dogs. They should all like me. All dogs love me. And it's just not true. Not all of them can take that. Best tactic is born ignore. If your dog cannot even be in the room without completely losing all function and thinking skills, then it's best to have the dog outside or in crate. Bring the people in, explain to them what you're about to do. And I'm telling you right now, it's harder to train the people than it is to get the dog to understand what you're doing. If you can just start the born ignore process without the people going, oh, it's okay. I love dogs. They all like me, but it's not always the case. So bringing the dog in after the fact on leash, so you have control over distance so that it's not breaching that bubble if it's not ready, not to restrain, but to just have a bubble. Because restraint can cause a lot of trouble too. I have a dog of my own. She has to be outside first when new people come into my house, and then she can come in and meet them. And that's just the way it is for her. It's more successful and it keeps her below that spider level. Because when we're up here and we're all we see is that giant spider, that's all we see. We can't do anything after that. So I'm not learning anything new. I'm not experiencing anything new. And I certainly can't hear you when you tell me to sit. I can't. My brain is already committed to that giant spider. So it's about taking it apart into little chunks and pieces for the dog and then building it up in increments, short and small exposure. And then we work our way up and build on each previous success.
So I have a tangentially related question. Is it, and this is my question, I'm asking questions too. I remember reading, and I want you to tell me if this is true or not. Is it true that when, or I can't remember if you told us this, but that when a dog is on a harness or a leash and they feel that pressure on their chest or on their neck, that it actually increases their reactivity? So sometimes the worst thing you can do is pull back on the leash, even if you think you're protecting the dog or the person or whatever the dog is going for. Does that cause more problems? And what do you do instead?
That's an excellent question. And yes, it can. It absolutely can. Because what happens, let's say it's a reactivity issue and you're walking down the street and here comes the thing that always triggers my dog, right? So we predict the behavior. Here it comes. I know he's going to do it. So we reel them in like a fish. We cinch up that leash to the side so they won't get away. But they're going to do all the things anyway. And we're forcing them to walk by that trigger. And one of the best terms I can say that has come out of this whole pandemic business is the term social distance. These dogs that are reacting to these triggers, they need that distance away from the trigger to be successful. And so when we try to push them through it and reel them in and restrain, yeah, we spread a whole lot of stress and tension down the leash because we're stressed too. We know it's coming and it's embarrassing and it's concerning and it makes us upset in some way. And so, yeah, that leash, the tension on the leash and the restraint on the leash can create higher levels of reactivity for the dog. So it's always best to change the distance. Instead of trying to walk by, maybe I cross the street and then go, for example.
Katrina is following up on the bore and ignore method. And so she writes, in a similar vein, my 11-year-old is reactive, and I use the bore, ignore, and drop treats method, usually from behind a baby gate, and transition into the same space when people come over. It takes about 15 to 30 minutes for her to accept new people. One of my worries is that my newly adopted 2-year-old, who is very friendly, will start picking up on her fear. And so I guess maybe the question is, is that a concern that the younger dog is going to learn fearfulness from the older dog? Is there a way to prevent that? Is that something?
That's a good question. And I'm going to give you a very vague answer. And it's one that we use sometimes in the training and behavior. It depends. Um, some dogs can be susceptible to following those examples. Lots of times barking and reactivity can be contagious. If one dog starts barking, the next one does because, sorry, there's a fly. The next one does because, he's doing it. I might as well back him up and help him out. So it kind of depends. And behind a baby gate is also, it's a great management tool, those baby gates, but it's also a barrier, like a fence, or a crate panel, or what have you, a crate door. And sometimes that can increase reactivity. And it's always the dog that I look at first. What's best for the dog? And if this is working well for this dog, that's really fantastic. But it may be that that dog needs a break away from the spiders so that your new dog can be around the people in a more relaxed environment, because you're going to be stressed when your dog's being reactive as well, if that makes sense. If not, please follow up with your question if I can fine tune that for you.
I think it might also be worth noting that learning can go the other way too. I adopted a younger dog, and my older dog, who was reactive, would kind of take cues from the younger dog about whether or not the thing was scary and needed to be barked at. So
it's almost like some of them need a support dog.
Yeah, absolutely. So what can you, and don't forget to type questions into the chat, but I am interested in knowing some more about fear-free handling. Do you know anything about that?
Which is what Dr. Judy.
Yeah, I mean, do you have any tips for, like, how do we find pet professionals to take care of our animals who are going to take care of them the way we think that they should be cared for?
So that kind of goes, from veterinary care to training to boarding to grooming. So you're kind of looking at the whole spectrum, right? The fear-free handling came out of Dr. Sophia Yen, developed that, and she has since passed. And but her programming still is so very relevant. Fear-free handling is taking a dog to a vet and not forcing it through a nail trim or a vaccination, or to the point where the pet panics. And there's so much more to it than that, but that would be your general rule, is that we're not creating more negative association with an experience or an environment. So again, it's taking that pressure off of the dog. Some of the dogs that I work with, I actually have them go and do happy visits at their vet. We go in, we get a few cookies, nothing bad happened, nobody poked me, I get to leave, yay. So we slowly start to turn that around. But forcing a dog to the point where even some of them will express anal glands and urinate on themselves because they're so overtly stressed, will create another negative vet visit on top of another. So the fear-free handling is really recognizing what the dog is saying, recognizing body language changes. What does a dog look like when it's stressed? And can we reduce this dog's stress in a way to help us and help the dog through this visit? And it's the same way with training. Jerking or using painful or invasive techniques does not create a stress-free experience with our dogs. And as humans, we're fantastic at telling our dogs when they're doing it wrong. We're really good at saying, knock it off, don't do that, I don't like it. But we never really think about what it is we want, and asking our dogs for that and reinforcing that behavior. And that's how it works. So fear free is more taking off that stress and showing and reinforcing something different, and also taking our time for what the dog's telling us they need.
You
Does
s-
that help, Noel?
Yeah, and you said something interesting. You said, what does a dog look like when it's stressed? Or what does we as humans, I think, tend to assume that dogs understand our language
Yeah.
and get real annoyed when they don't understand what we're asking them to do. Um, do you have tips about how we can I guess that's the question. How do we talk to our dogs? How do we understand what they're saying to us? And how do we get them to understand what we want from them? I know that's a super complicated question, and I'd like you to answer it in 5 minutes or less, please. But no, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Take as much time as you want, but
Start the
I've
clock
just
now.
I've just asked you a huge question, I know.
It
So be
is.
as vague or as general as you need to be. But
Okay, so dogs give us a whole lot of information. They're not verbal in the sense that they can sit down with us and say, this is really bugging me. They can't say that, but it does come out in body language, from where their tails are to where their ears are, to how they're panting, to how they're yawning, to across the board, nose to tail. There's something happening. So we have to learn what stress looks like for our dogs. Every dog will show those a little different, those stress signals a little different. And I'm not talking about I'm hot and I'm going to pant. I'm talking about lips peeled back, mouth open wide, tongue hanging out, panting. That's a stress pant. So we watch to see what changes the dog is showing us, and then to be able to ask them what we want. uh, I use jumping for an example, because jumping is a big one for a lot of people. We have this internal reel that kind of goes on in our head. We come home from the day, the dog's like, yay, you're home. And they come at and they jump, and we push them down. Get off me, get down, get off, get off, get off. They come back up and we push them down again. So the dog's thinking, man, I love this game. This is great. Every day you're given attention, whether it's negative or positive, it's attention. So this game that's begun is I jump up and they push me down and I come back up. It's not enough information in what we're thinking. They know I don't like it. They need to stop it. They know better. I hear that a lot. They know better.
mhm.
Don't. They're following a set of behaviors that are working for them, and that's kind of the nature of behavior. Dogs repeat what works for them. We repeat what works for us. Dogs do as well. It doesn't have to work for anybody else. So if I've got a dog that's jumping on me incessantly, I need to give better information. First of all, what is I want the dog to stop jumping. So my signal is usually off, firm but not, scary. Off, and I can step back a little bit so the feet hit the floor, not me. Off, and then what? How about sit? So I can say off, sit, what a good dog. Repeat sit, because what a good dog. So we repeat those behaviors that they're being reinforced for, and that is the nature of behavior. A lot of people will say, well, this positive training is kind of hooey, or we just throwing food at our dogs, but it's a paycheck. You go to work for a paycheck, and our dogs need to be paid for what they're doing. That doesn't mean forever you're throwing food, but you're creating learning opportunities so the dog understands what you want. How did that work? Time.
That's great. And we have a question in the chat, and then I also have a follow-up question to what you just said. So let's ask Deb's question. When you're meeting a potential rescue dog, what should you do to help assess whether this dog would be a fit for you? Pretty broad question again, but maybe if you have a specific example that you can give us.
Okay, so if it's a potential rescue, there's going to be a difference between rescuing from, large humane society to small local rescue. There's going to be a little different knowledge of the dog, but ask questions about the dog. What's your lifestyle? If you are someone who just likes to watch movies and hang out when you're home, which is great. You don't want a greyhound. You don't want a dog that needs to run 5 miles a day. You want a dog like a bulldog who wants to chill with you. You need to find out what kind of dog fits your lifestyle and personality. Um, Also, rescue some of these dogs in rescue, they do come with a history. What do you know about the history? What can I do to help this dog once it transitions to my home? And are you willing to put that in? Because sometimes it's a lot of baggage. I've got clients right now that will be working with their rescue dogs for some time to get them through that. Um, Also, if you have dogs of your own that you'll be introducing to this new dog, or this new dog will be coming into your home, find out if there's a way that you can set up a meet and greet, preferably on neutral territory if it's possible, but a meet and greet to see if these dogs have any kind of potential capability with one another, or are we going to set off some problems? And then there's a whole list of things that you do after that once you bring the dog home. But you want to think about lifestyle. You want to think about who this dog is, and sometimes there's a honeymoon period where we see a dog in a shelter, we see a dog in rescue, and they're not their full potential yet because they've hit so many transitions in their lives, and so it takes some time to work through them. Um, so there's a lot of what ifs and could be's in there. But as far as, this dog could be potential for me, what is my lifestyle like? What do I want in a companion? How I want to move forward? Um, and then if you have dogs or even cats, how is your dog going to integrate it? This new dog going to integrate into that? And what do you have to do to get it there?
You said something, you said, are you willing to put the work in? And that struck me, because I think, especially people who haven't been around animals very much and they quite reasonably want a pet and should be able to have a pet, but maybe don't realize that pets have opinions of their own, and there's work to do there, and they're not going to behave like stuffed animals that you can put aside when you have other things that you need to get done. You still have to take care of your animal. So I think that, well, I don't know if that I can formulate a question out of that. I just really appreciated what you said about making sure that you are ready to do the work that comes with having an animal, and knowing what kind, or at least trying to know what kind of work the animal you're considering adopting is going to require.
Correct. And
And
it is one of the old adage, there's no such thing as a free dog, if you've never heard that. Whether you are bringing home a brand new puppy or a dog that has had a life somewhere else, there's always work to do. The bonding experience is important. And so that's where training classes can come in to help you.
Mhm.
But also, um, the work some of these dogs need to have a successful life, some of it can be very time consuming
Mhm.
and full of environmental management and full um, of work to set the dog up to help them learn how to succeed in the way that you want to see them, or keep them below that big spider threshold. So yeah, there is. And sometimes some dogs walk right into your life and they're, hey, this is good. But not all, not all.
Well, and it's probably worth noting that it doesn't matter whether you're adopting an adult dog from a shelter or you're adopting a puppy from an AKC breeder. Either way, there may be behavioral challenges. There's no guarantee that you're going to get the perfect dog.
Yes, and the
So,
only perfect dog is stuffed, made of concrete or ceramic.
yeah.
I mean, in the rest, and we can never rule out genetics in anything, and so that plays a part.
Yeah.
Of this.
Sarah has a question, and I think you might actually disagree with her first sentence. She says, I know you train dogs, not people. Do you train dogs or people or both?
I train people.
Yeah, I was going to say. Okay, so what she wants to know, does you have any tips on getting visitors to follow training protocols? My dog will not jump on me when I come in the door, but she jumps on nearly everyone else because many people come over and don't mind because they love dogs. I'm guilty of this. I walk into Sarah's house or I walk into my sister's house who has two big boxers and I say, "No, let the dogs hug me. I want to hug the dogs. Let them jump on me." Or my mother's dog Sassy, every time I walk in and expect to be hugged by dogs. So, but other people don't like that. So maybe you should tell me what I should be doing to not cause problems for other people.
You know,
Train me now.
what I do is more about training or coaching people how to understand their dogs and train them. But I train more the people than the dogs. I just show the people that dogs are capable. But it is much harder, especially a circumstance like this where um, jumping on someone is something you don't want, but other people allow it. And they say
Uh-huh.
things like, "It's okay.
Yeah,
I love
that's
your
me.
dog." Yeah,
Sorry.
you're Noelle. Um,
Yeah.
so, yes. And so ultimately, here's the deal, they're your dogs. And it's up to you to enforce the way you want things done. So, to be done. And so, if this is a problem, then it's about asking the people, listen, I'm really trying to work on this. Because here's the thing about dogs, they don't generalize. They know, Sarah, it's not okay to jump on you, and you've worked through that, but everybody else, it might be because they let us. So it's
Uh-huh.
okay. It's okay to jump. So no, it's not okay. So that's where we train the people. Best route, if you're bringing people into your house and your dogs are jumpers, it's jumping for joy, have your dog on leash. You can control distance that way, and you can stand there as a hitching post as you stand back a little bit and stop sign the person. Stop, please. We're going to work on this. Please ask my dog to sit before you approach. So then we ask for sit. The dog sits. We go a little closer, and the dog goes, "Hey." Then we step back, sit. So we get the dog to understand that, to read cues from the environment. Now, for me to get the attention from those people I really love and like and love to see them visit, I got to sit first. So it's slow because they're used to doing the things with the people they're used to doing the things with, but you can get them there. You just have to, it's okay to be bossy.
Okay, so I have a question from Jane. Full disclosure, that's my mom, and I am best good friends with her dog Sassy. Jane says we do pretty well avoiding barking when we are on a walk. We have new neighbors all around who have dogs, and Sassy just can't let them be in their own yards without barking constantly. To add to that, one neighbor's put up a privacy fence, and that really frustrates Sassy. Any advice? It frustrates us too because we can't spy on the neighbors, but what do we do?
Um, one of the best, when we've got dogs like barking, my dogs do it too. Every dog barks. I mean, we can't ever stop it. The
Mhm.
only ways to stop a bark is cruel.
That
Uh,
honestly is reassuring to hear. Every dog barks, we can't always stop it.
no, I mean
I'm gonna
that's
get that tattooed on my forehead.
dogs bark. That's part of their communication. And it could be the neighborhood gossip that's going around. We don't know, but there are certain types of barks for certain types of things. Best rule of thumb is to work on a really awesome rock solid recall or come when called. So how do we do that while the dogs are barking? We don't. We have to train it again, like the spiders. We have to train it when those things aren't present. So being out in the yard, no other neighbors out, there's no barking going on. Come here, pup. Good girl. Go play. And so we're come here, reward, go play. And then we change our location to this part of the yard. Come here, good girl, go play. And then we move over here. So we're asking the dog to orient to us. If your dog's highly motivated by a game, like my Australian Shepherd, best way to get her off the fence is one tennis ball that squeaks, and we're playing a game and we're done. So for her, that's that's her best good thing when we're home. So we play out in the yard when we don't need it. We play in the yard when we do need it. So that coming off of that fence just is not because she's in trouble or because I'm now fed up with the barking.
Mhm,
And
mhm.
that's what happens. We get fed up with it and we start to yell. Stop it, knock it off. We call the dog's name over and over and over. It's not working. We're joining in the bark by yelling. And we're setting the dog up to fail that recall because we've waited so long that there's commitment to that conversation that's happening. So working on a rock solid recall when you don't need it, you're rehearsing for the show. Then when you do need it, realize that you may have to try a little bit harder or get a little bit closer to the dog to get them to understand what that you're doing the same thing and not waiting for it to go over the top. So as soon as I hear a bark begin, because it's like I said, it's going to happen. They bark, but instead of waiting for it to escalate to the point where I can't take it anymore or the dog is over the top, as soon as I hear it, I'm calling the dog to me to do something different. Whether we go inside or we play a game or we hang out on the porch step, whatever it is. It's about rerouting that behavior. It's not enough just to distract because they'll go, yeah, and then go right back to it. So it's more about getting that attention and then what do I want you to do next?
So to reiterate, just because this is a dog that I'm personally acquainted with, um, we want to start by training when there's nobody around, nobody else is outside, calling her to us at different points in the yard so that she's always conscious of where we are or learns to be conscious of what we're doing. And then when she is out barking or starts to bark at other dogs, we want to intervene pretty quickly,
Right.
and as quickly as we can, and bring in a positive alternative to the barking. Whatever she wants, whatever she decides she wants to do, or by she I mean mom, not the dog. Whatever mom decides she wants the dog
Right.
to do.
So
Okay.
sequence at my own house, I'll give you an example. My Australian Shepherd, she's the youngest of my three, and she's an Australian Shepherd. They notice everything. So I hear her begin woo 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 woo. It's always a quick pace, fast bark when something changes all of a sudden. That's gonna happen. I can't interrupt that. So it happened. Hey Minnow. She looks at me. Here's the ball. And sometimes I squeak it, sometimes I don't. And she comes in and we play and we play and we play. And then it may be 45 seconds. It may be a full on play session for several minutes, but we play and we've forgotten. We've gone on and we moved on to something else.
Mhm. Okay, that's really good advice.
Mhm.
Um, you, I keep saying I have a tangential question, but that you say things and it makes me think of other things I want to ask you. So what I want to ask you is, I think there tends to be a belief that at some point we should get to the point where we don't have to reward our dogs anymore. They should just do whatever we want. Is that accurate? Or uh, do we always give treats every time? Is there a point where I can just stop buying so many treats?
Well, first part of my question, or first part of the answer is a question. Do you go to work? If you went to work tomorrow and your boss said no more paychecks for you, you're doing a great job. This is exactly how I want you to continue.
Since my boss is in this room right now, I'm going to say, no, you have to pay me all the time.
Correct.
Yeah.
So now it doesn't have to be a constant, Pez dispensing of food because we do have to. And then I'm getting into learning theory and I don't want to get too far into that, uh, but we start with the food because it's primary and then we start to fade it. But my dogs still get a cookie for certain things, and some things I ask my dogs to do can be more difficult than others. So I may up my rate of reinforcement for a little bit. Anytime we're modifying or changing behavior, we up it a little bit and then we bring that food reinforcer down. And if you've done it correctly, you've paired that food with some sort of a marker word like, yes, good boy, good girl. So those words become connected to the valuable resource of a food treat. So no, you don't have to feed them all the time. And if you come to me and say my dog will only sit if I have this in my hand, then we
Mhm.
haven't faded that food lure fast enough. So that's where the dependency happens, is when we have not pulled back on that enough. Excuse me.
Mhm.
I'm sorry.
No, that's
Knew
okay.
that was coming. But if we
It's
have,
live programming. That's what happens.
wow, the dependency comes when we haven't faded that food away fast enough. Um, but at the same time, I still like to get paid.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think, is it not that you have to kind of know what your dog appreciates? So I had a dog he's real, or I have a dog. If he's in a high stress situation, he doesn't want food. Yeah,
right.
I had to find something else that appealed to him.
Yeah. Stress, that is a good indicator of stress, as a dog will refuse food. So sometimes we have to do things a little different. Sometimes we change the value of the resource depending on the environment we're in. Um, while a Cheerio may work great at home, in the training environment, you may need a piece of freeze dried liver.
Mhm.
So, it can be modified as you go. But yeah, sometimes in a stressful situation, food is refused because of the stress level.
Okay, so we're going to back up just a little bit. You had talked about rerouting techniques for Sassy in the backyard.
Mhm.
And then Sarah followed up with, is your rerouting technique also what you recommend for indoor barking? Is that the
Yes,
same, going to be the same technique?
absolutely. Yes. It's
Okay.
the same thing, because usually our dogs are barking out the windows, right?
Mhm.
And so, because I mean, yeah, it's a behavior that works. Again, we go back to what works for the dog, and it's a behavior that's naturally reinforced by the environment. I'll give you an example of dogs looking out the window, and here comes the UPS delivery. So the dog begins barking, right? UPS man comes up, we bark even more, UPS goes away, truck goes away, dog stops barking. So from the dog's perspective, I did it.
The truck went away. Clearly,
Yeah.
it was all me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all me. So yes, rerouting, as soon as it begins, good job. And at that point, maybe even we can reinforce the dog for noticing that's happening outside the window and not barking, which is a whole nother part of reactive training as well. We have to change the association with that stimulus.
Yeah,
But
I don't know if my experience is generalizable at all, but I got to a point where I was able to say, yeah, I see that. Okay, now come over here. And to a certain extent, that would work as long as he
yes,
wasn't over what I think what you would call over threshold.
right.
That would work. So
Yes, it does.
um,
Very
yeah,
much the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, just acknowledging it made him happy.
Yes.
Um, okay, and I want to remind people, if anybody else has more questions, put them in the chat. But now I want to jump way back to something you said like 15 minutes ago. You had just kind of mentioned, and I don't even remember exactly what we were talking about, but you had mentioned positive training.
Uh-huh.
What is positive training and why should we use that?
It's an
Uh,
excellent question. In short, positive training is reinforcing for the behaviors we want to see the dogs repeat. There's a lot of misconception out there about what positive training is and what it's not. It is not permissive. Doesn't mean you can't tell your dog you don't like what's happening. You just don't need to be painful or scary about it, but you do need to reinforce for what you want your dog to do. Again, we go back to the paycheck. I want to pay my dog off for doing what I've been trying to get them to do, and standing over them and shouting and telling them how terrible they are, and it doesn't, there's no information there other than just
mhm.
painful or scary in some circumstances. So in short, very quick, is that reinforcement training, or positive reinforcement training, is reinforcing the behaviors we want. And that can go from a simple sit to learning a complex behavior like for a service dog to retrieve keys and bring them back to their handler. So those behaviors can be turned into so many things, but we also have to show the dogs how, and we do that through reinforcing those behaviors.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. What is your certified professional dog trainer knowledge assessed, right? How does one go about getting that certification? What different kinds of certifications would dog trainers have that we should be looking for? Is that the only one? Are there others?
No, it's not the only one. There are other credentials out there for dog training. First of all, I'd look for a credential of some kind. Anyone can hang out a shingle. You could hang out a shingle and say you're a dog trainer. Anyone can. And our profession is not regulated by any type of agency. The certification that I do have is an internationally recognized certification. So that means what I had to do to get here was a whole lot of self-study. I put in the hours because I did have to maintain so many hours to even apply. And then I was tested on my knowledge, so knowledge assessed. And I recertify every 3 years, which means I'm continuing my education as I go. I'm not just paying for a shiny, pretty certificate. And I have a lot of years of experience behind me too, which helps. But there are other certification programs out there. There's the Karen Pryor Academy. There's the ABC College. Will I say one's better than the other? No, knowledge is knowledge. But I'd want to make sure that any trainer I work with follows at least what we call LIMA, LIMA, least invasive, minimally aversive. So we're going from least invasive first. We're never going straight to choke, pinch, shock. And I don't use any of those at all myself. But we're making sure that we're following science, not faulty theory like dominance.
Why? I bet you've had people come in and say, well, you're not going to be able to get any results from my dog unless we use a choke collar or what are they called? The prong collars. And yeah. What do you say to them?
I ask them to let me try.
And have you ever had failures? Or, I mean, I suppose if the human gives up and walks out, that might be a problem, but
yeah. And so we go back to science and how we know how to train so the dog understands what we want. And I did have one many years ago, a dog in front of me that did not know how to sit without a pinch collar on.
Oh, ouch.
And so what was equated to sit was that not the verbal cue, not the hand cue, this. And it was very frustrating for the human, and she did walk away. And that's, I'm sorry that it was that frustrating for her, but that was what that dog had learned. And so to unwind something like that and teach them something different, it's always harder to modify a behavior after there's been a lot of practice. I mean, think about ourselves. If we learn how to spell a word wrong, we've been spelling it wrong for years. All of a sudden oh crud, I've been doing this wrong. It takes a while to reroute that memory of it. So
sure.
Yeah. And it does happen from time to time, but for the most part, if I can show them their dogs are capable, I feel like there's that hope that we can change that.
Okay. So Katrina has a question, and it seems involved. So okay. I'm going to read it. One of the things I'm concerned about is making sure that both my new rescue dog and my older dog feel that they're getting sufficient individual attention. Are there any behavior indications I can be looking for to warn me if one is feeling neglected? Both have shown indications of attention jealousy, pushing in between me and the other dog when I'm petting. I'm trying to reinforce a command of it's her turn, your turn is coming, and alternate between them, but I'm not sure if that's the best method. So do you have any thoughts for how to get dogs to take turns? Do dogs do that?
They can, and you can put it on cue. What I'd rather, I mean, my Australian Shepherd, I just tell her out, and so she goes. That for her, that doesn't mean out of the room, but out of the where she's at. So for her, it works really well. But as far as the jealousy, and I mean, it's attention, it's demand for attention. And I don't know how long you've had the new foster or the new dog in your house.
I think she just adopted her, was it early May or mid-May? It's only been a few weeks, I think,
Okay.
that Katrina's had
Okay.
her new
So
dog.
still new.
About 2 or
Gotcha.
3 weeks, so
Okay.
maybe late May.
Yeah. So anytime I'm bringing a new dog into my group, the first thing I do is control environment to a point where I don't have to worry about um, competition over resources. And resources can be food, toys, places, spaces, beds, people, you name it, trash, really anything. Controlling the resources so that I'm not giving the dogs an opportunity to guard or possess or any of those things. And then I also, my resident dogs are going to feel a little misplaced now that all of a sudden this new dog's come into place. So, giving everybody a break from one another every now and then is not a bad thing, to help them learn how to be together. And one of my common questions to people is, do you like everybody you meet, and would you want to live with them, or would it take you a while to learn
Mhm.
how? So our dogs aren't going to like the other dogs right off the bat. They may be seamless and go, hey, look, new friends. They may not. So trying to reinforce it's her turn, that's great. So what does that look like to you? Does that look like the dog backing off and sitting and waiting? Or does that look like telling the dog to go to a bed and wait? What does that look like to you? Think about the specifics of what you want so that you can show your dog how to. And that means you might even have to, on your times when they're getting a break from one another, maybe one dog is crated or in another room or outside, while the other dog, you're teaching those cues to. So you're teaching that dog how to go here and do this. And then that dog goes away and you teach the other dog. So here's the formula. You have 2 dogs, you have 3 times the work.
That
Because
doesn't
you
seem
have to
right.
teach each dog individually how to, in order to learn how to do it together. And that's the nature of learning. I mean, dogs, they can become superstitious in their learning as well. But if we try to train them together, you're also competing with that in the environment. So it's about teaching them each how to do it on their own so that when they're together, they know what it means. So I would be specific about what it is you want that to look like. Do you want it to be, it's your turn? Or it's not your turn? Go here. Wait. And then exchange. But think about the specifics of it. That makes sense. I hope that makes sense.
I think so. So we are coming up toward the end. Yeah, and Katrina says, yes, that seems to make sense. So I think you did answer her question. That is a complicated, as a 2-dog human, that's a complicated issue dealing with.
It is.
Trying to train both of them at the same time.
Yeah.
And I will say that's when I really appreciated going into a training class, because you only take 1 dog at a time.
Right.
And one dog stays home, and then you get to go have this bonding time with this other dog, and you've got the class, so you have to go. You can't blow it off or say, well, I'm going to you can't make up an excuse for not going. You have to, but you have this bonding time with your other dog. Katrina says you'd think 2 hands would be enough, but it never is. And I just think that's generally true in life, probably.
Yeah, it's never enough. Yeah.
So I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat our survey. It's a real quick feedback survey. The site may take a few minutes to load, but if you and I'm speaking, of course, to our participants today. We really love it when you fill out our surveys for us. If you've been to an in-person program, it's the exact same questions you would see on that little half sheet of paper at the end of an in-person program. Please do fill that out. We do make programming decisions based on that information. We thank you so much for coming today. We especially thank Kelly for coming, and she expected to be co-presenting, and the other Dr. Juby was going to go first. And, we had this whole thing set up, and Kelly has really done an amazing job of just jumping in
Thank you.
and filling our program for us. So it's been an incredible, I've had a great time. I don't know how everybody else feels about it, but I've had a really good time.
Thank you
So
very
thank you so much to Kelly. Thank you to everybody who came today. This does end today's program. Go ahead and check our calendar of events for more programs coming up soon. And thanks so much, everybody. Have a wonderful day. Fill out our feedback form.